Shedeur Sanders didn't yell, he didn't complain, he didn't demand anything. And that's exactly why what he said hit so hard. In a league where rookie quarterbacks are coached to smile, nod, and say all the right things, Shedeur did the opposite. Asked directly about his future and whether he feels any commitment from the Cleveland Browns, his answer wasn't dramatic, but it was unsettling. He talked about control, about the present, about how nothing is promised. And in just a few calm sentences, he exposed something the NFL rarely talks about out loud. This wasn't a slip-up, and it definitely wasn't accidental. Because when a rookie QB avoids pledging loyalty right before a rivalry matchup, people notice. Fans notice. Front offices notice. And yes, other teams notice too. Especially teams that understand what it means to build around a quarterback instead of burning through them. To Browns fans, it sounded like distance, like doubt, like the beginning of another, what could have been story. To league insiders, though, it sounded like awareness, like a player who understands the business side of football way earlier than most rookies ever do. And here's the part that makes this moment so important. Shedeur didn't say he wants out. He didn't criticize the organization. He didn't hint at a destination. All he did was refuse to promise something the Browns themselves haven't promised him. That's not arrogance, that's leverage. And with the Pittsburgh Steelers watching from across the division, this suddenly became more than just a press conference. It became a message. But that message wasn't for fans. It was for the league. The moment didn't feel explosive at first. There was no argument, no raised voice, just a simple question that rookies are asked all the time. Do you feel a commitment from the team about next year? That's usually where you get the safest answer imaginable. Something about trust, something about faith in the organization, something vague enough to keep everyone happy. That's not what happened. Instead, Shedeur leaned into something most players avoid saying out loud. He talked about controlling what he can control. He made it clear he doesn't own the organization. He reminded everyone that nothing is promised. Not next year, not tomorrow, not even the next snap. And the air in the room shifted. Because answers like that don't come from confusion. They come from clarity. What made it hit harder wasn't the words themselves, but the calm behind them. There was no frustration in his tone, no bitterness, just a matter-of-fact understanding of how this league actually works. That's what stopped people in their tracks. This didn't sound like a rookie scrambling for the right thing to say. It sounded like someone who had already accepted a truth most players don't acknowledge until it's too late. The scary part for Cleveland wasn't that he refused to commit. It was that he didn't need reassurance either. He didn't ask for promises. He didn't seek validation. He simply stated reality and moved on. That's rare, and it's uncomfortable. Because when a young quarterback says, "The rest isn't in my hands," he's not shrinking responsibility. He's drawing a boundary. He's separating effort from outcome. And that tells you something important. This wasn't about this week's game or even this season. It was about positioning. And once people realized that, the conversation stopped being about one answer and started becoming about what it might lead to next. On the surface, nothing Shedeur said was disrespectful. He didn't criticize the coaches. He didn't call out the front office. He didn't even hint at wanting out. But for Browns fans, the reaction was immediate and emotional. Because this franchise has lived this movie before. Every time Cleveland thinks they've finally found the guy, something goes sideways. A promise gets broken. A rebuild resets. A quarterback leaves before the vision ever becomes real. So when Shedeur calmly said nothing's promised, fans didn't hear philosophy. They heard history repeating itself. What made it sting more was the timing. This wasn't after a blowout loss or a meltdown performance. This came after one of his more encouraging stretches as a starter. He was running the ball effectively. He was escaping pressure. Teammates were openly praising his leadership. Momentum was building. And that's when the question came, and that's when he refused to lock himself into the future. For a fan base desperate for certainty, that felt like distance. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The Browns haven't exactly offered certainty either. Coaching questions, front office instability, constant evaluation mode at quarterback. Shedeur didn't create that reality, he just acknowledged it. And that's why this moment rattled people inside the building. Because when a rookie quarterback won't publicly declare himself the guy, it forces the organization to look in the mirror. It flips the dynamic. Suddenly, it's not just about whether he's good enough for Cleveland. It's about whether Cleveland is stable enough for him. That's the shift most people missed. This wasn't fear talking, it was awareness. And once that idea settles in, panic turns into something else entirely: pressure. Because if Shedeur keeps improving, the questions won't be about his commitment anymore. They'll be about the Browns. Here, where the conversation quietly shifted from emotion to strategy. What Shedeur Sanders did in that press room wasn't random, and it definitely wasn't careless. It was controlled. Every word pointed in one direction: responsibility without attachment. And in the NFL, that matters more than people realize. Rookies are usually fighting for approval. They say whatever keeps them safe. Shedeur didn't do that. Instead, he framed everything around effort, preparation, and performance. Wins, clean football, growth. He never once asked for security. He never once demanded belief. That's the part that should have made executives lean forward. Because players who talk like that aren't thinking short-term. They're protecting leverage without ever saying the word. By refusing to promise his future, Shedeur didn't weaken his position, he strengthened it. He separated what he owes from what the organization owes. "I'll do my part," was the message. "What you do next is on you." That's a subtle but powerful shift, especially coming from someone this early in his career. And it's why this moment landed differently outside Cleveland. Around the league, front offices don't hear fear in answers like that. They hear maturity. They hear a quarterback who understands that loyalty in the NFL is earned through structure, stability, and follow-through, not press conference quotes. That's also why this wasn't just about Cleveland anymore. When a young quarterback speaks with this level of clarity, teams start filing it away. Not as tampering, not as a plan, just as information. Because the league always watches for moments like this. Moments where a player reveals how he sees himself inside the machine. And once that happens, the story stops being about what was said. It becomes about who was listening. And trust me, someone was. This is where speculation starts, and it's important to be clear about that. No one is saying Shedeur Sanders is trying to force his way out. No one is saying a move is happening. But in the NFL, perception matters almost as much as reality, and moments like this don't exist in a vacuum. The press conference happened right before a rivalry game, not just any matchup, but one against the Pittsburgh Steelers, a franchise known for the exact things Cleveland has struggled to maintain: stability, patience, and a clear identity. That timing raised eyebrows. When Shedeur was asked about the rivalry, he didn't play into it. No emotional edge. No, this one means more. He said he approaches every game the same: calm, detached, professional. Some fans took that as maturity. Others felt something colder beneath it. And that's where the online buzz started. Rumors began circulating, not because of anything he promised, but because of what he refused to promise. Fans started connecting dots: a young quarterback under pressure, an organization still figuring itself out, a rival across the division that values continuity and development. To be clear, this is all speculation, but speculation is fuel in this league. Front offices don't react to headlines, they react to patterns. And when a quarterback shows he understands the business side early, teams take note. Not to make a move tomorrow, just to remember, just in case. Because if Cleveland doesn't lock in around him, if things stay unstable, if commitment keeps feeling one-sided, then down the line, much later, those quiet notes start to matter. That's why this moment felt bigger than a quote. It wasn't about Pittsburgh today. It was about possibility tomorrow. And that's what made Browns fans uneasy. Because once the idea is out there, even as a rumor, you can't put it back in the bottle. To understand why Shedeur spoke the way he did, you have to look at the environment he's operating in. This isn't a smooth rookie landing spot. He wasn't eased into a stable system or protected by continuity. He was dropped into a situation that's been in constant evaluation mode. Coaches under pressure, a front office still searching for direction, an offense that's had to improvise more than it's executed. And in the middle of all that, he's taking hits. Protection has been inconsistent. Earlier matchups showed how quickly games can get out of hand when pressure collapses the pocket. For a young quarterback, that kind of environment can speed up mistakes or break confidence entirely. But instead of shrinking, Shedeur adjusted. He used his legs. He escaped when he had to. He kept plays alive when they should have been dead. That's not accidental growth. That's survival turning into development. Teammates noticed it first. The huddle got tighter. The pace improved. There was more control even when chaos showed up around him. Those aren't flashy stats, but they're the kind of details that separate placeholders from long-term starters. And that's why this moment matters so much. Shedeur isn't speaking from entitlement. He's speaking from experience, from understanding how fragile situations like this can be if the organization doesn't commit to building properly. Because development only works when there's a path forward. Growth only matters if there's something stable to grow into. Right now, Cleveland hasn't fully defined that path. So when Shedeur says the future isn't promised, he's not being distant. He's being honest about the conditions he's working under. And once you see it that way, his words stop sounding like a warning and start sounding like self-preservation. When most players say, "Control what you can control," it sounds like filler, something you say when you don't want to answer the question. But in this moment, it meant something very specific. This was Shedeur drawing a line between effort and outcome. He didn't dodge responsibility. In fact, he leaned into it. Wins matter. Clean football matters. His preparation matters. His growth matters. That part he fully owns. What he refused to own was the illusion that performance automatically guarantees security in the NFL. That's a veteran-level understanding. Quarterbacks wash out of this league every year because they confuse effort with protection. They believe if they say the right things and stay loyal, the organization will do the same. And then a new coach comes in, or a new system, or a new draft pick. And suddenly, nothing they were told applies anymore. Shedeur clearly sees that. By staying focused on the present, he's not avoiding the future. He's insulating himself from it. He's making sure that no matter what happens around him, his value is tied to what he puts on tape, not what he says at a podium. That mindset also explains why his answers felt so calm. There was no anxiety in them, no rush to convince anyone. When a player truly believes his play will speak for him, he doesn't need reassurance. And that's what made this moment powerful. Because a quarterback who thinks this way isn't waiting to be chosen. He's making himself unavoidable. If Cleveland builds around him, great. If they don't, his resume keeps growing anyway. That's not defiance. That's discipline. And once you realize that, the question stops being, why didn't he commit? It becomes, what happens if the Browns don't? Here's the part that gets lost in the noise. What Shedeur did wasn't a threat. It wasn't a warning shot. And it definitely wasn't a sign that he's checked out. If anything, it was a challenge, just not the loud, emotional kind people are used to. Great quarterbacks don't beg to be believed in. They force organizations to choose. By refusing to publicly pledge loyalty, Shedeur quietly flipped the pressure back where it belongs, on the Cleveland Browns. Because commitment in this league isn't proven with words. It's proven with structure, with patience, with an actual plan that doesn't reset every year. This is what should excite Browns fans, not scare them. You don't want a quarterback who pretends everything is perfect when it's not. You don't want someone who says all the right things while chaos continues behind the scenes. You want someone who understands his value, understands the business, and still shows up every week ready to compete. That's what Shedeur has done. Despite instability, he's improving. Despite pressure, he's adapting. Despite uncertainty, he's leading. And instead of demanding anything, he's simply saying, "I'll handle my part. You handle yours." That's how real partnerships start. The irony is this: the Browns don't need Shedeur to promise them anything right now. What they need is to show him, through actions, that he's worth building around. Because if they do that, the commitment everyone's worried about will take care of itself. And if they do, then this press conference won't be remembered as controversy. It'll be remembered as the moment the balance of power quietly shifted. And that's when the story really begins. What makes this situation so fascinating is what Shedeur Sanders said. It's what happens next. Right now, nothing has been decided. There's no breakup, no demand, no secret plan unfolding behind the scenes. Just a young quarterback focused on the present, stacking reps, stacking tape, and letting the league draw its own conclusions. But moments like this don't disappear. They sit in the background, they linger. And as long as Shedeur keeps improving, the dynamic keeps shifting. Every clean drive, every smart scramble, every sign of growth adds weight to his words from that press room. At some point, the conversation won't be about whether he feels commitment. It'll be about whether the organization is ready to give it. This is where franchises either grow with their quarterback or lose him before the window ever opens. History is full of teams that hesitated too long, convinced they had more time than they really did. Shedeur isn't asking for guarantees. He's asking for direction. And until that direction becomes clear, he'll keep doing exactly what he said he would. Control what he can, ignore what he can't, and let his play speak louder than promises. That's not drama. That's patience with an edge. And whether this story ends with stability or regret won't be decided in a press conference. It'll be decided quietly, week by week, while most people are arguing about the quotes instead of watching the clock. Because one thing is promised in the NFL: time always runs out.